Hi, it's me, Del Singh, from Late Night Banter. Just want to congratulate Brad Bansal on winning Great British Bake Off. Nice to see a Sikh guy winning a major cookery contest and the big one. Inspired by that, I wanted to talk today about Sikhs in the kitchen. Yeah, I said Sikhs in the kitchen. If you heard anything else, then ear test time, definitely. Because to be fair, most of the Sikh guys certainly don't spend time in the kitchen. I know I don't. It's just where the good food comes from. Normally prepared by mum, or in my case, prepared by my wife. Not that I'm blaming her for this, that's all self-inflicted. But yeah, you do get quite a lot of guys who don't do any cooking at home, but then on Sunday they do go to Gurdwara to make the langar. And occasionally it shows, because sometimes I've wondered why there's so much dal in my salt. Or is that salt in my dal? Anyway, I'll let you work that one out. Or why this gobi is really that crunchy. I think aloo gobi means you cook the gobi first. Certainly, I never ever was inspired by bananas in the chutney. But yeah, langar is always brilliant, and well done to the langari that go and make it, the guys that have a go and make it as well. And for anybody watching who doesn't know what langar is, it's the communal meal at a Gurdwara Sahib. And if you get a chance to go there and enjoy some brilliant food while you take in a Sikh temple. But once again, congratulations to Rav for winning Bake Off. Inspired anyone to get in the kitchen, have a go. Hopefully that's not offended anyone, because remember, this is just a bit of banter. And as I always say, let banter commence.
Good evening and welcome to Late Night Banter with me, Del Singh. My guest today is Professor Harminder Singh Dua. Now, Harminder is actually Chair and Professor of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences at the University of Nottingham. So I've actually got a real life professor here with me, which is quite an interesting thing. And so the idea here is to have a little bit of a chat. I'll try not to get too sort of medical and too house with you here, but because there's a man behind the medicine. So, Harminder, welcome to Late Night Banter, me, Del Singh.
Thank you.
Hope you're well.
Good evening. Yes, very well. Thank you.
Excellent. Harminder, interesting background you've got, because whilst you're very much based at the Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham and you've got some deep roots here in the UK, you actually were born in India, in Jalandhar, I believe.
Yes, I was born in Jalandhar. That's where my mother's parents used to live.
Okay.
And she'd gone for a confinement back home, and I was born there here.
Okay. And so was your early years and your education primarily in India, or did...
Yes, all of it. In fact,
Okay.
my dad was in the Indian Air Force.
Okay.
So he eventually retired as an air commodore, but during his tenure, every 3 years he would be transferred and we had to move schools. So went to many different schools in different cities like Pune. It was Pune then.
Pune then, but there's now been anglicised.
Bangalore, Gwalior, Nagpur. Once we settled in Nagpur for my higher secondary education, which is the current A levels, I went into medical school there. But that was transferred to Allahabad, but Mum stayed back because we were now in medical school. So.
And on all the travelling from school to school, did that not affect the way your studying went, or the friends you made? Did you have to leave?
Well, it did affect the friends we made, but the schooling, we went to these central schools, Kendriya Vidyalaya.
Right.
And they are for government officers who get transferred, and they have the same curriculum across the country, and they pretty much run in sync. So that you don't miss out a lot, and a very high standard as well.
Okay, but it sounds like you were obviously very, very dedicated to wanting to learn, because you obviously overcame those because of where what you achieved.
Yes, I think in those days, you know, education was very important, and it was emphasized by your parents all the time. So I'm one of 4 siblings. I have a brother and 2 sisters, and we're all pretty well educated, and you know it was sort of drilled into us. You have to study.
Were your parents? I mean, Indian parents, you love them. I mean, they are gurus at the end of the day. They are. But did they pressure you to become a doctor?
No, they didn't actually. My dad said you can do what you like, and my mum too. And my mum wanted me to be a doctor, but they didn't force me.
Right.
In fact, there's an interesting story when you have to decide whether you're going to be a doctor or an engineer. Those were the two main things at the time. At the age of 14.
Right.
Because if you go into class 9, 10, 11 and take mathematics instead of biology, you go into engineering. If you take biology, you go into medicine.
Right.
So I actually was in a school in Gwalior where they didn't take boys after class 8.
Okay.
So they had to put me in the Air Force Central School in Delhi.
Right.
It was a 3-hour train journey from Gwalior. And they put me in there in the boarding school, and I went to do mathematics. So I wanted to be an engineer, aeronautical engineer. I wanted to follow my dad into the Air Force.
Right.
But he said, no, you're not going into Air Force until you graduate from university. So I said, okay, I'll be an aeroplane engineer. And, did mathematics and went into the boarding school in Delhi taking physics, chemistry, and mathematics.
Right.
But we had to be there in the boarding premises about 2 or 3 weeks before school started.
Right.
And I made a very good friend, Kanwaljit Singh Sirai, God bless him. I don't know where he is, we lost contact long back. But he and I, together playing, studying, etc., went to school first day.
Yeah.
And Kanwaljit wasn't in the class.
Okay.
So I was worried, what happened to him,
Right.
And the first break, I see him out in the playground, and I said, where have you been? He says, where have you been? I said, I'm in the class. He said, oh, that's 9A, that's mathematics. I'm in biology, come over. So I picked up my bag, went and sat in 9B and became a doctor.
Oh, well, so hang on. So had this guy not told you to go to the other class, you could have been, well, A, we might not be talking today, and you could be an engineer.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whew.
Well, that was it, at the age of 14, you were that impressionable and that susceptible to suggestion. A good friend I'd made, the only friend there, first time away from home.
Yeah.
So he said, come over to biology, what are you doing in mine? I picked my bag and went there, and that was it.
Kids, the message there is definitely read your timetable, understand it, because if you don't, you could end up being something totally different. So there you go, that's quite interesting. So, and when I mean, I know we had a bit of a chat downstairs before we started this, and, I said, there's obviously the pressure to become a doctor. Indian parents do that and so on, and I think you came up with a nice anecdote about doctors and actors.
Oh yeah, well this is the story somebody told me where a young boy goes and tells his dad, Dad, I've decided to become an actor. And the dad says, sure son, the correct pronunciation is doctor.
I think that's brilliant, that is brilliant, yeah. So I'd imagine there are a few parents out there when they hear their son or daughter doesn't want to be a doctor, they're probably a little bit concerned and so on, so...
Yeah, I mean, there was a time in India where the two major professions were engineering and medicine, and everybody wanted the best for the children.
Yeah,
so that, I think, where it comes from.
So having done all this studying in India and obviously inspired, and you obviously think, I believe you obviously then travelled to the US and to the UK before settling in. What was it? There must have been a massive sea change when you got away from India to the UK, for example.
Yeah, it was. In fact, when you come here, you've got very little money.
Right.
B, you have to pass an examination, and you're not sure whether you'll pass it. Now, if you don't pass it, then you have to go back because you've got to do that qualifying exam. And then the cold hits you. You've never been so cold in your life.
Right.
And even in the summer, for example, Nagpur, where I did my medical education, the coldest day of the Nagpur winter is hotter than the
hottest summer over here. Yeah, okay.
So that's that, and then the culture is different.
And how did you find fitting into the culture here, coming from India?
It takes time, and you tend to. I mean, looking back, I think what we did is you found some other people from overseas who had similar experiences, and then you sort of joined with them. And there were people from Africa and Sri Lanka, Pakistan, India, and it's funny how any differences back home all disappear. When you're here.
You're all in the same lifeboat.
And then gradually you make friends with some of the local medics, and then it all comes out. Yeah.
And just coming back to medicine, obviously medicine is a very broad church in terms of disciplines and so on. At what point did you decide you wanted to get into ophthalmology, and that was for you? When did that happen?
Well, that we don't get taught ophthalmology until we are in our 4th year of medical school.
Okay.
And fortunately for us in India, ophthalmology was one of the major subjects in your final professional exams. Unlike here, where you get only 2 weeks of ophthalmology, we had a year and a half of ophthalmology.
Oh, wow, okay.
So you get a good exposure to the subject. And then I had a very good mentor who's sadly passed away now, Professor Ishwar, who sort of encouraged me to take on ophthalmology, because every professor wants to attract students to their profession, their specialty. So that's how I got inspired. And there was an examination for medical students. In the UK, we have one called the Duke Elder examination for undergraduates. People take that and get a good score, get some bonus points, etc., if they wanted to pursue ophthalmology. There we had one called the MP Ophthalmic Prize.
Right.
And it was a prize money of 25 rupees.
Wow.
Which is, in today's money, 25 pence.
25p. That sounds the sort of prize I would generally tend to win, but go on.
But anybody can sit. It's voluntary. You don't have to.
Okay.
So he encouraged me to sit the exam, and I got the prize. So I said, oh, well, this is for me, and that's how I got into it.
That's how you got into it. So, but the interesting is, I mean, you obviously have got, a number of strings to your bow, because not only are you a clinician, but you're also a researcher and also a teacher too, because you've actually, as opposed to just simply doing what doctors do, which is operate on people, you've obviously taken a real deep interest in ophthalmics and done quite a lot of research in this area, I believe, as well. And I mean, on the background is you've actually discovered the Dua layer, which is the 6th layer of the cornea.
Well, it's true that medicine has all these facets to it. There's teaching and training, and there is research. You have to advance your own specialty and your field, and you have to deliver a service, which is the clinical, surgical side of it. But there's a fourth side, which you didn't mention, which I hate, is the management side of it.
Oh, well, if you hate it, then that's why I didn't mention it.
Yeah, so that's not something. But of course, off late, I have become involved in that as well, and it's interesting. But my prime interests were my clinical research and teaching. Now, teaching is very rewarding. When you teach somebody and you see that you can see the light when they understand the subject. And it's also a selfish interest, because if you don't teach and train them well, they're going to be operating on your eyes when you get old. You better make sure they do a good job. And,
well, it sounds like you obviously had somebody that mentored you,
yes,
who obviously a major impact in your life, and I guess maybe some of that is paying it forward.
It is true, yeah. That's something which is absolutely true, and I have written on this before, that your parents and your teacher are the two people in this world who you owe a debt to, that you can only repay by doing for your students and children what they did for you.
Brilliant.
You can't do it any other way. You can't tell them and say, we're quits.
Right.
Because I've done for you. No, you can't. You have to pay back. So that's where the teaching comes in.
Right.
And in the service side, of course, when you help patients and you get into medicine, that's the most rewarding part of medicine, is when you see a patient you've done something good for. And in ophthalmology, it's very dramatic. Somebody who can't see starts seeing. It's like magic for them. So that's very, very rewarding.
Now, I don't purport to be an expert on eyes and so on, and I guess quite a lot of people out there watching tonight won't know too much about it. We'll obviously be familiar with things like the lens, the cornea as parts of the eye. So just in a kind of layman's term, this layer, the Dua layer that you identified, in 2013, what is that? Just explain it.
It's just a part of the cornea. The cornea is the clear window in the front of the eye through which light goes. Okay. It's also the most powerful lens of the eye. There's a lens inside which we call, when it gets opaque, we call it a cataract. But this does the bending. This is a different lens.
It's a refractor light.
Yes. So it bends light to get it to focus on the retina. So this layer is transparent, and it is made up of layers. It's a structure. So when it gets diseased, then you have to do a cornea transplant often to restore sight.
Yes.
It's like having a camera where the film at the back is okay, but the lens has gone cloudy.
Okay.
So the eye is capable of seeing. The camera is capable of catching a picture.
But it's all foggy.
Yeah, it's all foggy. So that's where we then do this operation to transplant the cornea. As somebody who dies and donates their eyes, that's the bit only that is ever transplanted.
Wow, okay.
So in that operation, it's done in 2 or 3 different ways. In recent years, techniques have changed. And in one of those techniques, we were finding something which was not what everybody was thinking.
Okay.
And it was completely different to what others were thinking and writing in books and papers. So we then tested that. We did that operation in eye bank eyes that were not suitable for human transplantation. And we were able to prove that there is this layer.
Right.
And now the surgical and the clinical importance of that layer has come to light, because in certain diseases of the eye, actually it plays an important role, which we didn't understand before. Now it makes sense. And in the operation itself makes so much more sense. And importantly, we made the operation safer by knowing that this layer is there, and that if you can preserve it, the eye is much stronger afterwards, etc. So that's how it has come to the fore. And recently there have been publications from Canada and Singapore where they have now shown, with very ultra high resolution scanning devices, shown it in the living human eye as well.
Brilliant,
And in animal eyes.
Brilliant. And when it comes to sort of afflictions that sort of affect the eye, the cornea, glaucoma is one that obviously is we all tend to hear about, and it's blindness around the world, particularly in countries like India, and I know a lot of Asian people are prevalent to glaucoma. Is that what corneal transplants will help sort?
No, that's slightly different. But so when just like your blood circulates in the body under a certain pressure,
right,
there's a fluid in the eye called the aqueous humor.
Okay.
This fluid circulates under a certain pressure.
Okay.
If that circulation is impaired and there's more being produced and less is being drained out, the eye pressure goes up. Now that can damage the eye, and that's what glaucoma is about. And if it damages the eye, then you have to do other things to reduce the pressure, either drops or operation.
Right.
The thing about glaucoma is that it affects 2% of the population above 40 years of age. So it's very common. And you don't have any symptoms until it's too late. So you must get your eye checked for pressure by the optician once a year.
Are there any contributory factors to glaucoma? Is it health, diet? Is anything like that, or lifestyle?
Well, not really. None of those, directly speaking. But it does run in the families. And if you're short-sighted, you have a greater risk. There's a small association with high blood pressure if you have that. But there is a racial predisposition as well. The darker your skin, the more likely or the more severe your glaucoma can be. So if you have, particularly if you're short-sighted, then the optician will naturally be checking your pressure once a year, particularly after 40 years of age.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
But there is a connection between this layer and glaucoma, which was hitherto unknown, and the control of pressure, rather. And that's a very new area. It's very, very infant in its stage of understanding and development. But we've got a small grant from the Birmingham Institute of Glaucoma Research to explore that connection between this layer and control of eye pressure.
Just at a more generic level, away from kind of glaucoma, I mean, eyes are very important, the windows to the soul. They're something, we're reliant upon. I know if we get any sort of damage to the eye and so on, we realise just how much we actually take them for granted. Are there certain things that people can do? I know, often we read about things like, obviously smoking is not great for the eyes. What are the things that one should avoid, or the things one should encourage? I mean, there's the thing about eating carrots as helping your eyesight and not smoking as being bad. So are these just myths, or they're true?
No, they're absolutely true.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely true. For example, smoking is bad for many things, cancer, etc. But what we don't realize is that the cornea, again, the clear part of the eye, doesn't have any blood supply.
Okay.
It doesn't have to have a blood supply to keep its transparency, for example. So it gets a lot of its oxygen from the air. It dissolves in your tear film and goes to the cornea. Now, if you're smoking all the time, you've got carbon monoxide all around you. Right. So even if you don't smoke yourself, but you walk into a smoky place, that is very toxic. Carbon monoxide can kill.
Right.
And that goes straight into the eye as well. So that's one way by which smoking damages, but also the other way is where it narrows the arteries, and then the circulation to the back of the eye gets affected, and then you get more damage. So smoking is bad many ways. Diabetes, if you have, can affect the eye quite seriously. And there is a national diabetic screening program, so all diabetics are called to have the picture taken, and an expert looks at it to see if there's a problem. So one has to control one's diabetes, weight control, take tablets, proper diet, and that will help the eyes as well. Blood pressure, same story.
Yeah.
And if you're overweight, then both diabetes and blood pressure can be controlled just by reducing weight.
Okay.
And that has beneficial effects for your eyes. And then like you said, diet. Diet is important. Definitely colored fruit and vegetables and green vegetables are very good.
Okay.
So it's not only the vitamin A, which is the standard, carrot story.
Yeah.
But there are pigments like xanthin and zeaxanthin, which are now being available as tablets as well. But if you just eat spinach,
so these are greens and purples,
that's
stuff
right.
like that.
Yeah. And then, but even green vegetables will have these yellow pigments, which are useful for the retina.
Okay.
So diet, therefore, is important. Yes.
Okay. And what about things like alcohol? Does alcohol? I know people get blurry vision when they've been drinking too much. Is that just as a result of just drinking too much, or does that actually because it's affecting the eyesight?
Yes. Well, you should know your limits. Like when the son told the father, son, how do you know your limits? You see those 2 glasses of whiskey. When you see 4. You know it's too much.
Too much.
But the son says, but there's only 1 glass. Yeah, so alcohol in moderation is fine.
Yeah.
Alcohol in excess is bad. And, in India, we hear stories, and sometimes in Africa, where they brew alcohol themselves, and there is a lot of methylated spirit in it, which is very, very toxic.
Causes blindness.
And then people go blind. So that kind of alcohol, obviously, is to be avoided.
Okay, so you've got to avoid that kind of stuff as well. Just and again, just while we're talking about sort of the myths and the reality, I know as a kid, I'd often sort of sit this far from the TV, and I'd get the obligatory sort of smack around the head was moved back because sitting this close to the TV is going to hurt your eyes. Now, I don't know if there's truth in that, but these days I know with kids and also with my grandkids, they've invariably got a phone or an iPhone or a device that's held about here looking into it. Are those sort of devices, good for the eyes, bad for the eyes? Or?
Well, like with everything, too much is not good. If a child is sitting too close to the TV or holding the iPhone too close to the eyes, it might be he's short-sighted. So the first thing you do is get his eyes checked from the optician. You might find that you can pick up a refractive error, which is the need for glasses at an early age, and help the child. So that's one. Second is, with computers these days and any device you have, a lot of them have fans which are spewing out hot air. From your desktop, from your printer, your scanner. So you're always encased in an atmosphere of hot air. And that dries up your eyes. And when your tear film dries, you get dry eye issues and problems. And the number of people having dry eyes in the world is increasing, and it's occurring at a younger and younger age. So there might be a role these devices play. Equally, when you concentrate on something, you tend to blink less. Whether it's a computer screen or a book or a newspaper.
So less lubrication around the eyes.
Yes, less lubrication. So you combine that with the hot air, then it's a recipe for getting more risk of dry eye and symptoms.
Well, I've certainly learned something today. As someone that spends a lot of time around a computer and stuff, I know that sort of often I'm kind of rubbing the eyes, maybe because there is less lubrication there and so on, and then they become inflamed.
And also, we're living in a world of more and more pollution. And there is more cars, more exhaust and fumes. That doesn't help either.
No, I guess so. Now, just coming back to surgery around the world, and I know different geographies, there's different regulations and stuff. I mean, some countries probably allow you to do a little bit more and go a little bit further when it comes to surgical transplants and stuff. Is the UK pretty much up there, or do you think that we're quite restricted here in how we can?
No, we're not. I think surgery is okay. For surgery, there are very few restrictions. All the laws and the restrictions are around transplant surgery. You can't just go and take an organ from somebody who's died. There have to be proper procedures, proper tests, consent from the family members, people carrying donor cards and so forth. So that sort of limits the availability of donor tissue for all kinds of transplant, not just the cornea and kidney. So that's variable across the world. But the ability to do the surgery and the laws allowing you to do that surgery, they are not restricted. Where there are some restrictions are in research on embryos and stem cell research. And So we are
Right.
actually more liberal in the UK than, for example, in the States.
Okay.
And scientists want to come here and do research here.
Okay, that's great. So, and if you, I mean, had you not gone to that class and become an engineer, but let's just say, if you were not now in the field of ophthalmology, you know, is there a profession or a vocation out there you would kind of see as a second string that you'd like to have got into?
Well, sometimes you think about this, you know, and for me, I'm so entrenched in it and I enjoy it so much that I'm going to stay, and I'm sort of decide I'm not going to retire and just carry on.
Carry on until they drag you out. Yeah.
But that's different. So, but what I do like is, you know, the hotel industry, you know, the cooking, the chef side of it.
Oh, really?
I don't cook myself, and if I
right.
say something, my wife's going to listen to this and say he's a liar. But I don't cook at home. She cooks very well.
Okay.
But I like good food, and I can cook if I have to.
Okay.
And I thought, you know, I often used to wonder if we should change professions completely. What will we do? Well, we'll start a restaurant or something.
Oh, so there you go. So this could be something. In fact, this
Totally
this could be an idea for a great new show where you take people out of their comfort zone and stick them. So you know, you become a Gordon Ramsay, and Gordon Ramsay becomes an eye surgeon. Although having that guy operating in your eyes, I don't think I'd probably think about that. So just, you know, over the years, I'm sure you've met thousands of people, you've listened to thousands of people. What would you say is the best bit of advice you've ever got?
Well, that actually I got that from my dad.
Okay, that's
long back, and he was talking about the floodwater technique. He said, you know, when the army goes to a place and there's a fortification,
right?
So don't try and waste your energy pushing the obstacle down. Just go around it and keep moving forward.
Oh, okay.
Which is what the floodwaters do.
Yeah.
And I thought that's very useful in life, you know, and I've used it many times.
Yeah.
And you instead of being frustrated by what you can't achieve and concentrating all your energies there, just forget that for the moment, go around, do what you can with the resources you have and the opportunities you have, do what you can. And sometimes the simple ideas germinate into the biggest thing, and that's what's happened with me many times.
Right.
And that's the kind of advice I would like to give.
That's actually not very different from advice I was given, which I always stick with when somebody said, you know, occasionally you can bang your head against a brick wall and effectively your head will get broken. Sometimes it's better just to go around the wall rather than actually keep battering against it. And if that was the best advice, what's the worst advice you've ever given? Apart from don't talk to me, but go on.
Well, I can't think of an advice that was bad, that has proved to be really bad. No.
It's a tough one. I know we seldom remember the bad stuff, but there you go. So that's fine. So just moving away from medicine slightly, obviously, you know, outside of medicine, you know, what are your kind of interests? What do you sort of
well, I like cricket.
Oh, okay.
Right. Don't play it anymore, but I used to.
Okay.
And when I watch cricket and I record the whole ODI and watch it if I can't on the day.
You record an entire ODI?
The entire
Blimey,
ODI.
okay.
Yeah. But the highlights, obviously, if not the entire. But only yesterday I recorded the whole ODI.
Okay.
The India-New Zealand match.
Okay.
Then I write poetry in English and Hindi, mostly in Hindi.
Okay.
And belong to a local poetry group. I'm a treasurer of a poetry group called Kavya Rang, which is Colours of Poetry in Nottingham.
And does your poetry, you know, do you follow a particular theme, or is there something that you're...
It's no, not particular, not any particular theme. Some of them are, you know, like patriotic, and some of them are philosophical, and some of them are love and romance related. And so it's a mix. And my sister is a very good writer and poet and well acclaimed in India, and she's written books and regular newspaper column, etc. So
when you send her your poem, does she laugh and say, "Come on, don't give up your day job, just stick to the surgery"?
Stick to the surgery.
Stick to the surgery.
But I haven't published much. I haven't published anything except for one poem in one book that was compiled. But I recite at places, and so that keeps me busy. And then you know, travel a lot.
Yeah, you're saying you're obviously speaking at events and stuff, so a lot of
Yes.
travel and stuff. So, but when you're travelling, do you get to see much of the places you travel to, or do you tend to be
Yeah.
airports and hotels and conference rooms?
Often it's the latter, airports, hotels, and conference rooms.
Right.
But if I go with my wife, or if I go with friends from the department,
Right.
then we'll make an effort and go around. But if I'm on my own,
Yeah.
I just hate going sightseeing on my own. So
Oh, well, see, we're different there. I mean, I used to do a lot of travel like that, and I used to always build in a day or two for R&R, and I used to get out there. But then, you know, I was quite good at my own company. But you'd look at some nice vista, and you would think, I wish there was someone here with me. But, you know, you couldn't do that. So travel's obviously quite important to you.
Yes.
That's pretty good. So, and is there a particular place that you like, you know, if you're really kind of in a mood or you want to wind down and so on, is there somewhere you go to relax or feel, whether it's sort of...
No, I don't go to anywhere special to relax or wind down, but I like a comedy show.
Oh, okay.
Nothing like laughter to wind
absolutely,
you down. And that's,
absolutely. This is nothing like laughter, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, but even you know, a simple Tom and Jerry show on TV that can make you
classics.
laugh, or a comedy show, or whatever's on. So that's useful. Or some music, you know, listen to some old Hindi songs.
Oh, okay. You're reading my script. I was going to come on to that in a minute. But before I come on to your kind of some of your interests outside of that, and I absolutely, this is not meant to wish you any ill, but if you were allowed to kind of, you know, write an epitaph or what people would say about you and so on, what would your kind of epitaph read? What would it be? What would you like people to say?
Well, I would like them to say what they would say. Is it?
No, well, obviously, what you would like them to say, because I mean, obviously, yeah. So, what would you like them to say about sort of, you know, Harminder Dua? What would you know? He was what?
Well, I think he was a good teacher.
Okay.
He was a good clinician, but not such a good father and a husband.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's probably your wife and kids are probably going, yeah, spot on. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and that's probably only because he was spending too much time being a teacher and a clinician, I guess. But we you know, we all spend too long following our vocation and neglecting our family.
Getting the balance right is very difficult.
It's tough. So you won't be the first. So just very quickly moving on. I mean, you mentioned sort of films, music and stuff, and I you know, as someone who's passionate about music, I always ask my guests a bit about the music. So, you know, what sort of music do you enjoy and listen to?
Well, I listen mostly old Hindi songs.
Like Rafi, Lata.
Yeah, Lata Mangeshkar, Mohammad Rafi, Kishore Kumar, Mukesh, Talat Mahmood. These.
So the classics.
The classic songs, and for some reason it tends to be the one which are the more melodious, the sort of the song, sad songs, you know, or a little bit of tinge of sadness in them. That sort of song, rather than the, you know, the ones you can dance to, not those ones. And so that I listen to, you know, plug it into my computer and YouTube, and then listen while I'm working sometimes. Yeah.
So when you say while you're working, now I mean for a lot of us, we see surgery on the TV, we see house and doctor programs like that. So I guess my question to you is, do you actually have music playing in the background when you're operating on patients?
Well,
is Mohammad Rafi in the background or not?
No. I personally don't insist on music. Some surgeons do.
Okay.
But my nurses who are in the operating room with me, they will put on some classic instrumental music, not vocal music.
Okay.
And we have to ask the patient if they don't mind, and because often we operate under local, and they
it's local anesthesia, so they're not
everything that's going on. So sometimes they express a preference and some that yes or no to have music. We can't have every track there to go according to their wishes, but we would ask them occasionally. Yeah.
And so the music, obviously, you've got that. What about your you know, if you're sort of, I know you do a lot of travel and stuff, and occasionally you sort of saying you get to watch movies and stuff. So what sort of films and movie interest do you have? Are they, again, Bollywood?
No. Very rarely I watch Bollywood films, mostly English action
movies.
Good,
that makes two of us. But yeah, go on. So is it action movies?
Yeah,
what sort of action movies?
Well, I like the James Bond series, and I like that. And then, you know, the Mission Impossible and Die Hards and those kind of, you know, where there's...
Are you a secret fantasist? Do you actually, so should I think your second career would have been a spy or an agent? Sort of,
no.
Harminder Dua, spy.
No, actually, when I was a child, I very much wanted to be in the armed forces.
Okay.
So more the military kind rather than a spy.
Okay, but you still like the idea of this action thing. It was
yeah.
interesting you mentioned James Bond. Obviously, as I mentioned, I've got a little bit of an interesting link to James Bond and the film Octopussy. I actually tied the turban on Kabir Bedi for that film, so that was quite something. So
Yeah.
my epitaph will be very much along the lines of you can see his headgear on the big screen on somebody else's head. But you've got an interesting turban story as well, haven't you?
Yeah, when I was a resident in Aberdeen, we used to come to the Oxford Ophthalmology Congress, very prestigious meeting in Oxford. And so on one of these visits to Oxford, as I was checking in, the guy handing my key said, you know, Professor Sohn Singh Heri, now he's a very eminent Sikh ophthalmologist. He's a neuro-ophthalmologist.
Okay.
He was in Edinburgh. He's originally from India, and he settled in the States. So he had been invited to be a guest speaker, give one of the named lectures. And they said, he's looking for you. Sohn Singh Heri was looking for you. Oh, wow. Sohn Singh Heri, you must have read one of my papers. And I said, well, it's interesting, you know, because he's a researcher. And then I walked in towards my room, and there the master of the Oxford Congress is Professor Andrew Elkington. And he came to me, oh, Harminder, have you met Sohn Singh? He wanted to see you. I said, oh my God, this must be something. So I dumped my bag in my room, ran upstairs to where Sohn Singh Heri was staying, and knocked on his door. And he said, oh yes, come on, come in, come in. He said, you know, he says, my baggage hasn't arrived. Have you got a spare turban?
That was it. He wanted you because he wanted you for your turban.
He wanted me for my turban, not for my research.
Not for your research.
So I felt a bit deflated, and then I sort of said, of course, I had one, and then helped him tie and then tie
it, so on. So there you go. We got claims to fame. I tied one in a James Bond film. You tied one on an eminent ophthalmologist. So there you go.
Well, he could tell. Yeah, I helped him roll it.
But yeah, he tied it himself, I'm sure. So actually, just while we're talking about turbans and stuff, I mean, you know, in the medical profession, and certainly when it comes to surgery and clinicians and so on, are turbans okay? I mean, because you see people going into the sort of, sterile environments and stuff. Is there an issue with that or not?
No, there isn't. And you can do it two ways. I mean, we have a head cover which goes right on top of your turban. Or you can take it off, wear your sterile, or it's not sterile, it's always a clean cap.
Yeah.
So it's clean, it's never sterile what we put on.
Yeah.
Even the greens are not sterile, but then we wear the sterile gown on top of that.
Okay.
So
but it's never held you back having a
No,
so
star. We do that. No, it's never held me back. Of course, in India, everybody knows. In the UK, there's much greater awareness about Sikhs and turban than in the Americas, for example. Yeah. And in Europe also, it's not as much. So in the UK, you're very comfortable, everybody knows. But I find this on airports now quite a lot. You know, I've been about on 3 occasions, twice in Brussels, and once in Portugal, asked to take my turban off and put it through the X-ray machine. So that, I think, is something they're getting more educated about, but that's happened. But otherwise, it's not been an encumbrance, really.
Well, I don't think they're allowed to do that. I mean, I guess in certain parts of Europe now, they're a bit scared of it. I know in the States, not long after 9/11, I actually had a guy literally about to put his hands on. It was a small airport, Providence, Rhode Island, put his hands on my turban. I told him he couldn't. And we got in a bit of an argument, and then his supervisor came along and said, actually, the guy's right, you can't put your hands on it, you can put a wand over it. I said, you can either put a wand over it, or you can maybe go to a room and take it off. I'm happy to do that, but there's no way you're going to do this. And I think it's just there's a degree of ignorance. I mean, the guy's final comments to me were something like, and it just shows you how ill-informed people are out there, sadly, in some of these things. He goes, well, it's not my fault you choose to wear fancy dress. So, that's right. This is fancy dress, guys, so just shows you how stupid people are.
Well, it's interesting, but I don't mind them putting the hand on, or sometimes they make me put my hand on, they test it for, the...
for residue and stuff, absolutely.
And they also, I don't mind them putting the hand on, but when they ask you to take it off, I did once ask in Portugal with one of the cities I was coming back that, he said, I said, can I get a private room to take my... Because that's written over there. You can. He said, yeah, we can take you 5 miles away. You're going to miss your flight, but we'll take you there. And I said, no, okay, I can't miss my flight. So here you are. So it's there. I mean, that is an issue. But I remember once I was going into the States, and again, just jokingly, they stopped me 4 times. If I travel with my family, they never stop me. If I'm on my own, they stop me 4 times. And And that's when the first Gulf War was there, and the Taliban were very much in the news. So when he stopped me the fourth time going out of the airport, not coming in.
Right.
I said, you know, if I was a terrorist, why would I come disguised like one?
Well, yeah, I kind of, you know.
And then he's, oh, step aside, sir.
Yeah, exactly. It's that same argument. You know, I sort of said to them, you got people like Richard Reed, the shoe bomber. You know, you got guys there that don't look anything like it. And I said, you know, the difference between Sikhs and Muslims, but it's a separate issue. But you know, I suppose, like you said, there's a degree of, you know. But to be fair, I don't mind. I mean, like, safety first. I mean, you know, by all means. You know, search, interrogate with me, but do it for some other people as well, please. You know, let's keep it for everyone, so that way around. So that's great. So just moving on. I mean, this next part, I wanted to sort of ask you. I would call this dinner party, where I sort of say to you, if you were allowed to, you're having a dinner party, you're allowed to invite 3 guests, and I say no family because I know kids and wife may get upset that you didn't invite them, but you know, this is my show. So 3 guests, dead or alive, that you would like to share, you know, break bread with, have a chat with. Who would they be, and why would you invite them?
Well, the first one would be Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay.
And the reason is he's still very relevant, and in fact more relevant today than he was in his time.
Okay.
And with the violence that we have, with the terrorism and the political ambitiousness pushing people to corruption, all that. So he never held any political office, preached non-violence, and never held any wealth, which he could have.
Yeah.
And so an example for the whole world, and that's why he's respected across the world. And those values are really more relevant today in the younger generation and the older generation.
That's
so
pretty good.
I think that's one.
And the other thing is, you wouldn't eat a great deal either, would
He
you?
wouldn't, he wouldn't eat it.
You'd have loads for everybody else. But go on. So
very true. I didn't think of that, but that's
sorry, that's just me thinking. But go on.
Then and he wouldn't drink either, because I don't drink either. But that's fine.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
And then the second person would be Professor Ishwar. I mentioned him earlier.
Yes, you did.
He was my mentor and professor in ophthalmology. He inspired me to get into this subject, encouraged me, and right through from undergraduate days through post-graduation. And so there have been others after him. There have been 2 professors in the USA, one in the UK, you know, who kept that going, but he really started
He's
it
the one
for
that
me.
got you on that journey.
So that I would certainly. Sadly, he too is not here anymore. So, but he would be nice to tell him, look where I've reached.
Did he ever find? I mean, with all of your, with your sort of research and stuff, did he know about that, or did he pass away long before that?
He passed away. Well, he was there till my mid-career, but then he didn't see all.
He didn't
all
see
of
the
it.
rest of it.
Yeah, yeah. So it'd be nice to
course it would.
tell him all that.
Of course it would.
And then the third person is a current friend, and he's a great person. And his name is Nat Puri. He's a gentleman in Nottingham.
Okay.
And he is a very wealthy, self-made gentleman from India. Still keeps his Indian passport.
Right.
Although he's got a CBE.
Right.
And he is a philanthropist. He gives so much to charity across the world. And looking at him, you won't say he's so unassuming, down to earth, always willing to help. Again, the kind of people who are very rare breed these days, and we need more people like him.
That sounds like my sort of person. Somebody who's very sort of unassuming, but actually is selfless, gives. I think that's, you know, I know as Sikhs, we talk about Sarbat Ka Bhala, which is the welfare of all, and Seva. And I know recently I've got more into trying to do things for charity on a very small scale compared to your friend there. But, you know, I think whatever you do to help someone else actually makes your own life, that enriches it so much more. So it sounds like an amazing person.
So he does it in, and like I said, in India, when there was the earthquake in Nepal, it was there with his money. And I mean, he's got the money, and many people have a lot of money, but to be actually use so much of it just to help others. And he does that all the time, all the time.
Well, I think it's inspiration. I mean, I read the other day that Warren Buffett gave away 18 billion the other day, obviously inspired by people like Bill and Melinda Gates to do that, and a number of other people out there, which I think is amazing. You know, it's more money than they'd ever spend in their lifetime, so why not start to give some of it to people that maybe, you know, it can benefit some various causes. That's great. So those are the kind of people around the table with you. And you mentioned food earlier on being important. You're a food person. So what would you want to serve and what would you want to eat? What's your favourite kind of meal? What would you?
Well, actually, you know, I've tasted all kinds of cuisines from all over the world, and for me, still Indian food is the favourite.
Yeah, okay, I understood it might be. But
I can't eat spicy food, which is chilies.
Okay.
So that might not be typical Indian for many people. Because
I
of the
can't
chili,
either.
But still, for me, that's still the best, and that's what we would. And a lot of people who have not eaten it before enjoy it. You know, Brazilian food is very good. Middle Eastern food, Lebanese, Egyptian is very good, and then Chinese food is also very good.
Is there a particular Indian dish that you would want served there?
Well, we would have 2 or 3 different things. You know, we would have your lamb rogan josh and some chicken tikka masala, which is a little mild version of it, or chicken korma, and then Indian sweets, you know, which are made out of khoa, the condensed milk thing, those kind of things. And the naan and roti everybody likes.
Well, I'm a golwa saag and makki di roti. That's me to a T.
That's right. So I mean, of course, there are some vegetarian.
That is. I mean, I do eat meat as well, but that for me is just if I had one thing, unless you can leave, that's whether you got to pick. It's kind of like your final meal on death row. That would be it.
But Gandhi wouldn't eat the non-vegetarian. So
exactly. So there you go.
Give him the saag and the.
You give him the saag. So I was just thinking about the Mahatma there. That's why I had to chuck that in there. So that's fine. And if you had to get somebody to come along and clean the dishes up and wash up after you, somebody you maybe were less fond of, who out there right now, or where you could think about a history that you'd probably want to do that?
Yeah, well, I could think of, but you know, if I had to make a choice, it would be the current Brexiteer politicians.
Okay, anyone in particular?
Well, the one that stands out most is Boris Johnson.
Brilliant. Okay.
Because you know, I think you know, democracy. And just we talked about actor and doctor. You know, hypocrisy and democracy are not the same.
I know.
And you can't lie to the population to get their votes for such a major decision.
Hey, listen, the guy in America did that, and he's running
the
show.
What it is. But that's what we are redefining democracy as hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy,
And you can tell a lie, and fake news is a word I think he uses more than the American.
Yeah.
And that's what they did, you know. It's not true. I think we're going to harm ourselves. My personal view is we're going to harm ourselves more by this all of Brexit than we could. And that's why he would probably deserve to wash the dishes.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I think so far most people have gone for Trump, but Boris Johnson is probably out there as well right now and so on. So that's great. So, Harminder, just to finish off and wrap up with, I've got this thing here. This is a kind of, it's a fishbowl. It's what I call the Sikh Inquisition. It's actually more of a self-inquisition because what it is, there's random questions in here, which I'll ask you to sort of pick out a few of these and answer them. So basically, you either make it and.
All right.
So I hope it's quite small, so I don't know if you can actually read that, but what is it?
Yeah, I can read. Oh, I can read. The math is good. Yeah.
It's great.
So this is a question number 81, if you want to know.
All right.
What part of your body would you replace with a mechanical version?
Hey, there you go. Go on then. Go on then.
Well, if all parts of my body are functional, I wouldn't replace any.
Of course, but
I think if one part of your body is non-functional, the limbs are the commonest ones one would use, but we are hoping that one day we'll have an artificial eye as well.
Right.
And there's a lot of work on that with chips and retinal chips and so on.
Oh, okay.
And that would be
nanotechnology, I guess, would it?
Well, yeah, it would be nanotechnology plus a lot of other electronics.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's very, very diplomatically done. That's great. So that's good. Personally, for me, it'd be my knees because my knees are pretty much shot right now.
First movie you ever watched? Well, this was a Indian movie.
Yeah.
And gosh, I don't even know. It's a black and white movie.
Yeah.
And the most boring thing I ever did in my life was that because we were kids, my mom took us with her.
Yeah.
And in this hot cinema theater, sitting 3 hours, not understanding a word of this movie. I remember we were sitting in the balcony, and I wonder what it was.
Was it a Hindi movie?
something. Yeah, Hindi.
It was a Hindi movie.
Adi Roti or something.
Adi
like
Roti.
that. Something like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
so obviously, I mean, it wasn't. It was obviously not that memorable then.
No. Well, obviously, but I mean, the experience was memorable, for the wrong reasons.
But the movie wasn't.
Because you've never seen a movie, you don't know what to expect, and you just feel the heat. When you get an ice cream in the break, that
was your treat. So that's
yeah.
so obviously.
Well, this is. Well, if you could press a button and make one person disappear from the world, that's an easy one. That'll be Donald Trump.
Oh, well, okay, fine. I was thinking you were going to say Boris again.
No.
I
I don't want Boris to disappear, but Trump definitely.
Trump definitely, yeah. I think I think there's a consensus forming here. Quite a lot of people. I have a feeling there's not a lot of pro-Trump people are going to watch this and like it. But go on.
What's your favourite board game?
Oh, okay.
Now it used to be chess at one time. I used to play, and my son loves it. And he used to, so it's that. But now I don't have the time for that. So yeah, chess.
Chess.
Yeah.
Okay, simple.
Yeah.
A couple more of these songs. So it seems like you're having a bit of fun here. So go on.
Have you ever been arrested?
Yeah, come on. You've got to be honest with this stuff.
Yeah, no, I have never been arrested. I've paid parking fines and speeding fines.
Speeding, well,
yeah, those sort of things.
You're human.
Yeah, but no, never been arrested, thankfully.
Thankfully.
And where are we? What's the best or shrewdest purchase you've ever made?
Oh, there you go. That's an interesting one.
If you ask me, it was a typewriter.
Okay.
Learning to type was one of the best things my dad forced me to do between my higher secondary exam and going into university. I had 3 months.
Right.
He gave me a tenner and said, go learn to type.
Right.
And the lessons were cheap then, and it was on a typewriter.
Yep.
With, these were tick, 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 tick.
Yep,
tick.
The reason I'm nodding is my dad did exactly the same with me. Running his business, he wanted somebody who could do letters, and I got the short straw. I had to go to these classes, which are full of women learning to type, and I was the only, well, as a kid really, I was sitting there with all these women doing Pitman, typing.
But I learned to touch type.
I learned touch type too because of that.
ASDF, semicolon, LKJH, that's what.
Yeah.
And I tell you, never looked back. It was such a useful skill. And then, of course, I bought a typewriter, and I typed my own theses for my MS, for my PhD, my brother's theses, my wife's theses, and so many of these, and my publication. And the typing became.
Well, I mean, I must admit, while I was learning to that touch type and stuff, I hated it. I hated it. But like you say, in later life, I realised, at that time we didn't know how computers were going to turn up.
Absolutely.
And do this, and keyboard would become part of a standard day. And so I know when I got into kind of the computers, I saw people going, and I'd be going along there like that, looking at stuff, doing this, and they were like, "What happened to you then?"
And that's why I said, you should have bought a typewriter.
Exactly. Couple more of these, and then before we wrap. So let's just have a look. What else we got here?
What's the most out of character thing you've ever done? I've not done this, but my wife did it for me. She bought me an Audi TT, which was a sports that was certainly not for me, because I'm not that kind of flashy and into cars. No, she bought me this fan. Whenever I went everywhere, they used to say, "That's not for you. That's not you." And I said, "Well, that's."
Was this some sort of midlife crisis they thought you were going through?
Well, it was on our 25th wedding anniversary. She bought me this silver Audi TT with a number plate, which I still have. It was H5 Dua.
Okay.
So instead of the S, you had a 5, so it was my name. So, but I think that was certainly didn't fit with my character. I never used the high-speed gear and the sports version.
You drove it in first and second. That was it.
No, it's the sports version. You could flick a switch and go into the sports mode. And I never even used it because that's was completely so.
So that was out of character.
Yeah, it's completely out of character.
Let's do one last one. I think that'd be interesting because I'm having a bit of fun there.
And let's see. Have you ever been stopped for speeding? How fast were you going? Well, I haven't been stopped, but I got the camera caught me, and it was Twice, I think, 40 in a 30-mile zone.
Yeah, okay.
SP40 is called.
SP40 they call it, yeah, that's not too bad. I actually got done doing 95, so yeah.
Oh,
that was in the 20s. No, joking. Joking, no, it wasn't. That was actually on a motorway.
Was that in a James Bond movie?
That wasn't a James Bond movie. Maybe I was thinking I was in a James Bond movie, and that actually was in a silver fast sports car. And so, yeah, I've kind of got over that as well. Aminder, thank you very much. It's been absolute joy speaking to you this evening. Very, very insightful, good insight into a clinician, a teacher, a researcher, and somebody that's getting into management too. So doing all those things. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Del Singh here saying Sat Sri Akal, good night to you from Late Night Banter with me, Del Singh. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks for the bants. Tune in next week when my guest will be Sanjeev Sahota, professional boxer